Da 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 da. What's my good cheer? Welcome, everybody. Let's give YouTube a couple of minutes to get those notifications out. In the meantime, if you've never met me before, hi, I'm Cindy. I explore the inside and the outside. I'm just going to turn my notifications off there and turn my volume off here. And we're going to have a little bit of a chit chat. I'm going to do my very best to do a good job. It is always in my intent to put out something that somebody might find relevant in their life, to be able to make a little bit of movement for themselves, not to just go through their entire life just bumping up against walls, right? Bumping up against themselves and bumping up against others. And if you're anything like me, you've probably done quite a bit of all of that. And sometimes it is in those, I believe that those other parts of us are trying to get us to wake up, get us to recognize that there is something more to us than our problems, than the things that want to take us down, the things that make us think that we're not capable or we don't matter. It's always my intent that we do a little bit of course correction. And I mean to be the example for others when I do that. This week, I wanted to stay in the subjects of dynamic families because I come from a dynamic family. And I would have to say, most of my problems, if not all of my problems, are resourced from my childhood, from those experiences that I had as a kid. Got to the point where, I didn't need to have those insecurities compounded into me by anybody else because in my own understanding, I knew I could pick up that baton and do it to myself. And sometimes, too, in that avoidance of our problems, in our avoidance of what's uncomfortable, some of those topics, some of those realizations that we don't think we have any control over, that we can come to find that we do have all the control in that, even coming from that battery of our emotions. We live in a world right now where humans are just totally beaten up in their emotions, in their mental states. And it is because, the the power out there where it makes them feel good. It makes them feel better about themselves when they can keep people beneath them. They can keep people, well, serving them like as slaves. There are lots of kids out there that are living in a state of slavery where kids, right? And the parents don't even want their kids. And because they're looking to hook a guy and a guy that doesn't even want to stick around after a little while, right? That we look at the kids as a nuisance, as something we would do without, but then we've got this persona that we need to present to the world as a good parent. So, right, in that agitation, we try to keep it inside the home. And that's specifically what happened to me with me where it came into those relationships with my mother. I understood, right, that I was a needy child. Right? I admit that to myself, very codependent. But I was programmed to be codependent on my parents, to look for whatever I needed. I had to resource that stuff from my parents and not outside of my household. It is a messy subject, but it's an important subject because any one of us can look out the world right now and we can see that we are doing a bad job as humans. And it's something that we have to take responsibility for. Just like we have to take the responsibility when we weigh too much, we have to take the responsibility when we're not able to keep a roof over our head, where we have that responsibility because we birthed children, whether we wanted them or not. They are our responsibility. And not only our responsibility, that's our future. Those are the gifts that are supposed to be nurtured, that are supposed to be enjoyed, but not out of a way of making them feel bad so that you can feel good, but in that camaraderie, right? Yesterday we had that word companionship for the first time in 3 weeks. Gave it a little bit of thought today because I find these things curious. I look at patterning when it comes to making movement in my life, right? Because again, I believe that those other parts of me are trying to get a message through my noggin. And because I don't want to look at it because it's too painful or it's too much effort or it's going to make those qualities that I'm very insecure about a focus, something to be pointed at people. And this is something when it comes to my brand. I don't know if you guys have been hanging out with me for any length of time. I really have been working at finding my voice when it comes to my beliefs, right? But my beliefs are not out there to bash other people, right? They are based on my own experiences, in my own recognition of my problems, and also, right, to pat myself on the back a little bit in that recognition of all the work that I've done for myself. Again, like I said, I want to be that example to others that no matter how low you got in your life, right, that you can overcome. Lots of us, we delve into religion. We find Jesus, we find God, and it makes us feel better that we feel that somebody is on our side. That's how I feel about those other parts of myself. And that's why I pay attention to the patterning. And when we got this word companionship yesterday, well, that's what we're supposed to be to each other. It doesn't matter if you're a next door neighbor or you're a teacher or you're a mother or a father or a sister or a brother. Like we are put into a group to learn to untangle the wires, knowing that each one of us is different. It's why I wanted to talk about dynamic families this week. Hello. Hi, Cindy. Everyone here, I hope that you are feeling better. I thought a lot about you last night and all day today. Very kind of you, Tammy. Today, I cut off the aspirin and the ibuprofen. I don't like taking medicine. And I wanted to see where I was in my state of tolerance. And on top of that, I stayed out of bed for almost 5 hours today, and my neck felt a lot better. But then once I crawled back into bed, I was watching the clock. I says, okay, Cindy, you can go lay down at 3:30. It was 2:30, but I was looking at that clock every 10 minutes and I just wanted to crawl back into bed. I was starting to ache and not feel good. But I was determined, right? I needed to see for myself if I could do it. And I did it. I'm not feeling 100%, but I've been finding little tricks along the way to make myself feel comfortable. I've even got my tea in my Be Kind cup because it's important to be kind to us. And we shouldn't just be kind to ourselves when we're not feeling good. Because if I had listened, right, because a couple of days before my whole body gave out on me, I kind of felt a little bit sore, right? A little bit achy. But when I went out the last day, but right when I really started hurting, I actually thought my brother in law, Tom, he's such a sweet guy. I'm very lucky that he found my sister Alice. They're a good match. But he posted on social media about heart attacks and something that people don't know when they think they're having heart problems, that sometimes when your arms go sore, when you think like you're scared, your chest is hurting you, you really think maybe you might be having a heart attack, that you're supposed to cough really, really hard, then breathe in really, really deep, and then cough really, really hard, and then breathe in really, really deep. I never heard of that one before, but I tell you, it worked. I wasn't having a heart attack, but it worked in relieving a little bit of that tension while I was on my walk. I was heading to the hotel to visit my sister and drop off a bathing suit. But when I put on my backpack, I felt it. I felt it in my arms that something was hurting pretty good. And I thought, well, you overdid it, Cindy. You went for some long walks this week. Every single day you went, like I was doing 6 or 8 miles every single day, right? And I felt good in that because I feel spring in the air and I wanted to be out there and I was dressed comfortably and stuff. But I had been picking up things, getting chores done and stuff. And by the end of the day, my backpack was loaded. And that was the breaking point for me. And I woke up the next day and I couldn't even get out of bed. All day I stayed in bed. I didn't even eat anything. I think I tried to have some toast in the afternoon and I couldn't even get the toast down. To yesterday, I didn't eat anything. And then today, I made myself a chicken fried rice. And I actually ate my dinner, all of my dinner tonight. And on top of that, I cut up a couple of oranges and I had a couple of oranges. And I've been drinking water. I've been drinking my bottled water. And I got off the medication today just so I can have an idea. I'm still sore, but no more sore than I was yesterday, all pumped up on aspirins. Like I wasn't even keeping track of how many aspirins and how many ibuprofens I was taking yesterday. But I know that I could have taken care of myself because, again, those other parts of me are surfacing and trying to give me those messages, but I'm not paying attention because I'm just headstrong in my ideas. Oh, I got to get this done, and I've got to pick up my contacts, and I got to get some grocery done, and I got to get some camp propane tanks. I've got to pick up these things for my camping trip in September because my trip is so expensive. But because in the moment I can't afford the big things like paying for all my camp spots and paying for my car rental for 3 weeks, that's going to cost me $1,500 just in my car rental, right? That I have to make sure that all the small details are taken care of that I can do financially and taking care of myself. And today, here in Canada, they give us a little bit of money every few months to help with groceries and the taxes that we pay. And so that showed up on my doorstep or today actually. Showed up in my bank account today and I went, "Oh my goodness, this is all the money I'm going to have all month unless I sell some things," right? And I didn't care because sometimes in taking care of yourself, it's taking care of those responsibilities. So I paid off my internet for the month. I'm all caught up in my house bill. So at the very least, I don't have that pressure. I'm not going to have that worry on me that I am falling behind in my bills, right? That I took care of things now. It doesn't leave me anything, but I know those other parts of me take care of me. And somebody will want something that I'm selling. I had a few inquiries today, and it looks like I might be selling three hog farm toys. Right? They're to scale. They come with the pigs and the farmers and the stalls and the barns and the fencing, and they're really expensive. Like they sell for almost $200. And my sister gave me one to sell, and she had a couple listed on eBay. Gentleman called me today from Dryden in Ontario, and I told him, I says I can ship them out to you, but it'll probably cost you another $40 for me to ship them off to you. And he says, well, my sister goes to Winnipeg every once in a while. And then off by chance, he says, oh, I like the buildings and it's hard to come across the buildings. And I says, well, I got a couple more. My sister's got them. She's got them up for $180 each. But you know what? If you give me $280, I'm sure she'll part with all three for that price. And he was pretty excited. We communicated all day. So now he's looking for a family member that's coming into Winnipeg to stop by here and pick them up. So I have to make sure that I tell my sister to drop a couple of more off at my house. But $280, that's pretty good considering she only paid $10 each for them. She bought out a store, like they were toys from a pricey store, and they didn't check out what the value of them were, and they marked them for $10. So she picked them all up. She picked a lot of them up, right? But I offered him three of them for $280, and he wants them. So that was pretty good. Like I said, those other parts of me take care of me, but it's important for me to do my part. And when in that repetitiveness and those things consistently showing up, I got to trust that those other parts of me are trying to say something. And if I had paid attention because I was achy, I would have, I should have looked back as to why I was aching. Once I took my backpack off to get at the bathing suit for my sister, it hit me right away that, oh my goodness, I've been overpacking my backpack on my long walks. But I had things to do, I had to accomplish, and I just bypassed that information that definitely came across my path. And that was an unkindness to myself, right? That was definitely an unkindness to myself, especially when those other parts of me work so hard to make sure that I am moving forward. But in moving forward, I have to remember that I'm human, right? And I have to be kind to myself. Let me have a sip of my tea. I have to be kind to myself. So if I needed to be in bed all day yesterday, which I did for 2 days, I've been in bed. I don't have that really, really bad pain in my arms anymore. It's in my neck a little bit, but that's because I'm spending so much time in bed and I've got my pillows all kinked up in my neck. But it feels so much better to have all that medication out of my system now, and I'm managing pretty good. And on top of that, I've roasted pumpkin seeds. Pumpkin seeds are absolutely amazing for inflammation. I really think they're going to do me a lot of good. So I went and bought myself a bag of pumpkin seeds. I put them in just a couple of teaspoons of water, and I sprinkled salt on them, because if you sprinkle salt on them before you roast them. The pumpkin seeds won't hold the salt. But if you put water on them and then put the salt on them, the seeds will absorb the salt really well. Sorry, I just had a little handful of sunflower seeds, but they're very good for inflammation. I took my lesson today, right? Better late than never. Better late than never, right? Because I could have said I got things to do, right? I could have said, oh, I need to go to the drugstore and get some extra strength Tylenols. And I stayed in all day today, right? I pushed myself a little bit this afternoon because I wanted to stay out of bed for 5 hours, if at all possible. I've only been managing to get out of bed for 20 minutes or a half an hour, numerous times during the course of the day because I'm not tired, right? I'm not tired, but at the same time, having my back straight, it's helped me out so much. Then, like I said, I made myself some dinner, drank a couple of bottles of water, drank my tea, did my dishes, right? And I actually felt pretty good. Even the pain in my neck went away because I was making that kind of movement. But then, right, my arms started to ache a little bit, and I decided that I would crawl back into bed. And when I crawled back into bed, of course, I kinked my neck up in my pillows, right? And, but I managed to take a nap this afternoon for, I think, an hour and a half this afternoon. I think I conked out. And then I kind of woke up. And of course, I have my lessons and my content going on in the background, so I'm just laying there and taking in the lessons. And I thought, oh my goodness, if there was one thing good that came out of this, was the fact that I was able to absorb the lessons so much better than when I'm just sitting here. Because just like the TV surfers, I can surf through content too, but I have to feel it out. I have to resonate, and again, it's in the marketing and in the influence of the thumbnails. It got a good title. They can hook you and you go in and go, oh my goodness, this is just crap. And then you're out of there and you're searching for something else. And it's important to do that, right? As soon as you recognize something's not for you, and not that it's just not for you, because there has been content. Like when I first started taking in Carl Jung, he's a famous psychologist, but he delved in pretty deep, and I didn't get any of it. So whenever it was suggested to me, right? If it was a good title, I'd go in, but after a few sentences, I'd just say, I don't get this, and I would be out of there. Now he's one of my favorites to sit in. I can sit in for an hour and take a lesson from him, and I can really um, involve myself in the content, and not just involve myself in the content, but evolve myself in the content. I have my favorites, especially when it comes to, right? I have no idea. I really wanted to know when I first woke up to some of these ideas. I really wanted to know where I got it wrong, right? Where I knew the difficulties in my childhood, right? I could go back there easily. It's in the past. It's easy for me to go back into those experiences and delve in deep into the whys and the hows. But I don't know why the emotions were so important for me to delve into. For the most part, I think it's because I was an urban explorer. I was out there on the road, right? I was camping. I was doing bushcraft videos. I was doing back road exploring. I was exploring abandoned farms and abandoned barns, abandoned schoolhouses, abandoned houses, and abandoned churches in being a content creator. And again, like I could say, like, I have to go back to see why I got so involved in that, right? Because it was something that was making me feel good. It was something that was relaxing my system, and it was something that I was doing anyway. So when I was looking for how I could be a creator online, it was a no brainer for me. And that just kind of led me in to this. Now, like I said, I could sit in on Carl Jung all day long and take in insights. For myself, I really appreciate Sam Vatkin. He's I don't know what nationality is. He has an accent, maybe German or Ukrainian. I don't know. Russian. I don't know, but he doesn't focus on his own personal information. He focuses on resolving and understanding emotional problems, specifically different personality disorders. And I would have to say, that Sam Vatkin is definitely up there with Adler and Carl Jung for sure. And of course, they go about it, each one of them, in a different way. But oh my goodness, I can't imagine how far I've come in that. Okay, well, we said we were going to talk about dynamic families, but I think that's maybe relevant because it was in my unique and creative reasoning that, right, I wanted to make a little bit of a life for myself, understanding that Cindy did matter, that Cindy had something to contribute. And that was probably a big part of it too, in wanting to contribute online, right? To contribute in a way that maybe other people could realize that they could create the best life for themselves as they possibly can, no matter how squashed they were in their life, right? No matter how they were always under the thumb of somebody else and didn't get to live their own lives, right? Okay, let me come into the comments. Uh, oh, Earl, you're a Christian then. Amazing. I love that. You never go to the doctors at all, and I'm okay. Most people are influenced to believe things that are not true. And I agree with you a little bit on that. My sister just had a triple heart bypass, and it took like 6 years for them to give her a proper diagnosis of heart failure. It should have been the first thing that they looked for, considering that's what my dad had, was congenital heart failure. And they actually told her that she had a good little heart, and she code blue and ended up in the hospital like 5 times in an ambulance, right? In an ambulance, and she almost died from that. I think sometimes doctors, right, with the medications and prescriptions, and their buddy owns a pharmacy, that they purposely keep us all drugged up, all in a worried state, because how many of us, sending some good cheer to whoever that is, um no matter, oh, I lost my train of thought in doing that. I did lose my train of thought in doing that. And that happens every once in a while. That's short term memory, and that comes from trauma, that comes from my childhood. I was brought up to have these experiences and then get over them immediately, right? To not think about them again. But sometimes our experiences, they imprint on us. And you know, that fear, oh, that's what I was talking about, the fear of doctors, right? Of going to see a doctor and getting hooked into the system. And I believe that's what happened to my sister, right? It's just not her 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 heart failure that she had, and she had that fixed, you guys. Like, that's technology today. My father had the exact same operation, not a triple heart bypass, but he had a bypass in his neck because his brain wasn't getting any blood, any circulation, right? And he didn't make it through the operate well, he made it through the operation, but not much after the operation. My father passed away from that, right? And yeah, I was really surprised that my sister had been seeing doctors for like 6 years. She'd been seeing doctors and never even gave it a thought that it was her heart, because the doctors were all saying she had a good little heart, right? And she believed the doctors. And in the end, that's what took her down. But at the same time, she's very adamant about taking care of her, about care of her issues, right? Taking care of her issues and her problems right away now. And I think the state in her life that she is, because she does have a few of health issues in her life, right? I believe that God is letting her burn a little bit of karma in her life, right? It's difficult, right? When you get that little bit of payback, but you know, to be able to have that opportunity to wake up to some of the wrongs that you do in your life, just like I did, and have your own choices whether or not to, right? Just ride those waves and adapt and conquer with what comes across your path. That in the next life, right? That's taken care of. You won't have to go through that again because you've gotten those lessons in this life, right? I'm not a Christian, right? I grew up. My mother loved Jesus. But she didn't have a favorite denomination. We were gospel. Uh, uh, oh my goodness, I can't even think of all the different evangelist. Jehovah Witness. We were Jehovah Witness, and that was traumatizing for me too, right? Because my mother would be with the baby, my sister Carolyn, on the other side of the street, and we would be knocking on doors, and people would be threatening to sick their dogs on us and slam the door on us and yell at us and throw things at us, and it kind of traumatized me too, right? And then if somebody did say, "Oh, yes," then I'd yell across the street for mom to come over and we go sit at somebody's kitchen table. That was the only fun part because, they would give us Kool-Aid or cookies or something. And then her and mom would have these conversations, right? But yeah, the Pentecostal, yeah, there were lots of different, and because, when I was a child and I was crying for help, right? I was crying for help and I was praying to God. I had a thing where I would open up the Bible to the verses to see if God had a message for me because I really believed in the messages from the Bibles, but I never felt like I was getting any help in that. And I guess I lost my faith. Once I was 12 or 13 years old, I never went back to church except to get married. And even that was not a good experience because the priest was a base because my husband was in the military. So he was a padre on base and he was drunk and they had to wake him up. He was over an hour late, maybe 3 hours. He was very, very late. And because everybody lived on base, most of them walked over to the church, right? And they had to stand outside because nobody was even there to open up the doors for everybody. And yeah, it was a pretty sad situation, especially when he burped all through the ceremony, and then when he did his little speech, all he talked about was divorce. Must have been a sign. Should have been the first sign. I know. I loved my husband. I loved that experience of being married to that man. But the church burned down like 2 weeks later. The whole church just burned to the ground. And 2 weeks after getting engaged, I lost my engagement ring. But because I was a compulsive gambler, my husband thought I pawned it for gambling money, which wasn't the case. I kept all the garbage for like 2 months in a storage room because I couldn't bear the fact and the idea that maybe my engagement ring was in one of those garbage bags. And I went through them like every day for like 2 months. I was certain I was going to find my engagement ring, but I never did. I actually think that it slipped off my finger in a dishwasher at work, and then the cleaning man actually found my engagement. The cleaning man actually found my engagement ring, but it kind of made me feel bad that my husband thought that I had pawned the engagement ring. There were lots of signs, but it was a good marriage, and he was a good man, and he was very sensitive himself, very empathic himself, and he kind of had a life like I did, right? I wanted to have children. He didn't want to pass his genes down. So he didn't like talking about his childhood, but it must have been pretty bad if he didn't want to pass his genes down. But in the end, he promised me I could have a baby. But, right, when I was getting close to that 40 years old, I was like 37. I said, it's going to be now or never, right? And I started hounding him a little bit about that. And then you compound all the other issues that both of us had. And it kind of made for a really sad breakup. It wasn't a mad breakup. It not in any way. In fact, it took us almost 10 years to give up on each other, right? I told him never phone me again, and he never phoned me again, right? And I go poor and he go poor by buying plane tickets so we could visit each other and stuff, right? Just in that background hope that we could fix things, right? Because I really did care for him. But I picked men like my husband. My husband was cute and right, and I was one of those people that didn't look at whether or not he would have been a good father. He would have been a good father, but he didn't want kids. And probably somewheres in the back of my mind, I thought that right, I wasn't going to have kids. He wasn't in the end that let me have kids. He was just trying to trick me into marrying him, right? And but every man I picked was kind of like me, right? In all aspects, right? In all aspects, in truth. But we were looking for the fun and the joy and the good times, right? In our life, and nothing to do with moving forward, because at that time I didn't even want to look backwards. I didn't, right? That was in the past. I didn't want to delve up those bad feelings, right? I just kind of accepted things for what they were. And in accepting things for what they were, the other were didn't really resolve. So, again, in those dynamic relationships, I changed, right? It was a slow process, right? It was a slow process. But finally, right? Knock on wood, that it kind of sunk through. And I actually enjoy what I'm doing. And, you know, I hate to say it, but I think I would make better choices moving forward in looking at what would be uh, better for me and better for the person that I'm marrying, and looking at my partners as if they would be good parents, good providers, right? That they would be kind and loving, and they would protect me from what didn't care for me. And, it's sad that we grow up in those households. And especially, it's even worse now because parents are having babies just to hook the guy, and they're not even taking into consideration what these guys can contribute to their life and their children's life. They're just looking at cute bums, right? And it's causing a lot of problems in the system. A lot of single moms who don't want to be moms, that are kind of blaming the kids for the life that they didn't get to have. And it was kind of like the situation that went on with me when I was a kid with my mother, right? She blamed me for everything, even when she had a miscarriage and then she got pregnant with me like a month later. And she blamed me for the miscarriage of the first baby, right? And she got pregnant really fast after she miscarried the first baby. So that first baby's genes, right? Genetics. I had those too. So I had a double whammy in my experience for sure, right? But we have to take these things into consideration. We want to do better by our kids than we did by ourselves, right? And as kids, we don't really have much choice but to bumble along with what our parents are up to, what they want to dictate to us. But as adults ourselves, right, we can do better. We can do really so much better. We really, my generation, we really made a mess, right? I was the first one to have a divorce in my family's history. Wow. Yeah, I was the first one to have a divorce in I was going to say, because it took us 10 years before we actually got a divorce, but I think still by then, uh, nobody else had divorced. And now all my sisters have split from their spouses, right? Some of them have found good men afterwards, but right, that is the luck of the draw, right? And sometimes, and I loved the two brother-in-laws that I even loved the narcissist brother-in-law, right? But he was so mean and so nasty, and he could just yell at you, right? You're looking to sit there and have a good time. You couldn't even have a good time because he just on you, right? Because that's how narcissists do. They've always got to be in control. They always got to be king or queen. And yeah, and that was just perfect timing for my sister because she was able to get out of that marriage when she did. And if she hadn't gotten out of the marriage, my sister Tracy, she wouldn't be here right now, right? And that would have been on my brother-in-law. Well, I don't know, but we would have blamed it on my brother-in-law because we all deserted her in the end because we couldn't take it. We couldn't even be around him. And in the end, we couldn't be around her because she had become so negative in what was going on that we couldn't bear to be around her either. And she was the most amazing sister ever. She still is. She still has that heart about her, but she is so involved, like Earl was saying, with the doctors and the medications for her diabetes and her blood pressure and all that. I'm sure she's taken, and now she's getting shots to drain fluids from her eyes because now they've taken her driver's license away from her. And this is what I'm saying, like this is just all karma that she's having the opportunity to burn off in her life so that she doesn't have a stack of it in the next life, right? And she did a lot of good too, so maybe she'll burn it all off, right? Maybe I even considered it today when I was looking at what happened to me. Maybe that was a little bit of karma for me too, in recognizing, Cindy, you're not 20 anymore. And it's because I don't have children, right? I don't have that husband with gray hair. I don't even have gray hair, right? But because I don't recognize my age, I know I overdo it, right? I know I overdo it. And I've got to make sure that I remind myself more often to be kind to myself, right? To be kind to myself. Okay, you guys, let's pick a card tonight. I'm not going to call it a night. I'm just going to read these few comments here. I don't know how far I'm going to go back. These guys are yapping. Oh, you work on your 4 cars and motorcycles and house and cook for yourself. You like cooking, Earl? Do you like cooking? I'm not, right? If I could afford to go to restaurants every day, I would do restaurants and I would be a better eater because of that, because of my income bracket, right? The lot of not good food today. I was looking in my cupboards today, right? Because I wanted to eat healthy. And I did manage to make a nice chicken fried rice, and I roasted my pumpkin seeds, and I drank 2 bottles of water. I got myself off of the medication today. In this moment, I'm not even thinking about my discomfort, and it basically it's just in my shoulders now. And I put my thickest hoodie over the arms of my office chair because the arms were too hard and they were making my arms so sore. So now I got a little bit of cush for my arms, and that's helping me out a little bit. And I managed to stay up for 5 hours today. But I'm going to listen to those other parts myself and make sure that I have what I need, that I'm kind to myself, right? And, I would like to think, in the past half a dozen years or so, a little bit more than that, that I have taken in those lessons and I've taken them seriously. But then there's moments like this that you just think, oh, Cindy, you're just not paying attention. You're just not paying attention. And there were hints to it, right? There were hints to it. Yeah. When I come home from those long walks and I can't even get out of my office chair because I'm so bagged. I can't even get up and make any dinner because I'm so bagged. And those are the patterns that we're supposed to be paying attention to, right? Yeah. Okay. Um, that's nicey that Tammy says that. Uh, yeah. But yeah, try not to get yourself so wrapped up into the system like my sister did, I can't believe they told her that she had a good little heart when she had congenital heart failure. Like, and right in the apartment she went code blue, and she got whipped to the hospital, and they were able to save her every single time. And then she finally got to a good specialist, and he says, oh my goodness, you need to have a quadruple. She only ended up having a triple bypass, but they told her quadruple bypass. And that was scary for her, especially when my dad had the exact same thing and he didn't make it through, right? He didn't make it through. He dropped on the floor in front of the nurses station, right? And he was heading out to have a cigarette. Yeah. My dad smoked 2 packs of cigarettes his entire life. But I also know my dad tried to quit cigarettes almost every single week his entire life because he'd give them to us and tell us to hide them on him, right? Not to give them back. But then when he asked them to give it back, we always give it back to him, right? Um, don't believe doctors, but instead tell Jesus Christ how you feel, right? Talk to those. Well, those are your other parts. Jesus is a part of you, Earl. And talk to Jesus and explain to him your situation for sure. Now, I've got to learn to be a little bit more vocal, not just, oh, I caught that in my mind and then do a little bit of course correction. But you're right. It's important to verbally talk to ourselves, to talk to, right? To Jesus or Buddha or Hare Krishna, right? It's important. Uh, I love pumpkin seeds. I eat a lot of different seeds and different nuts. They are very healthy and beneficial. Yeah, right. They help with inflammation in the body. And because of me sleeping in the bed and kinking my neck and right and in my arms getting those warnings that I had overdone it, I thought maybe pumpkin seeds would do me a little bit better than the aspirin and the ibuprofen. And like I said, I'm not big on medication. I don't normally take it, but guys, I made it through my lives. I showed up, but I showed up better in how I presented myself than how I actually felt, right? It's important to be myself. So I expressed how bad I was feeling, but I didn't express how truly bad I was feeling. But I'm feeling much better now. Maybe a couple of days. I think maybe I'll stay in the house one more day to recoup and see if I can go 6 hours out of bed before crawling back to it, right? Um, oh my goodness, lots of yapping. Uh, I talk out loud to Jesus and let people think I'm crazy. I've got to practice in that, Tammy, right? And maybe it's in the repetitiveness of it being twice in this conversation. That in that companionship, I should be thinking in that companionship with myself, right? That companionship in whoever, whatever, who's going to listen to me. Because, right, in the thoughts, they're just your thoughts, right? We actually have to vocalize them. And I know that for a fact, and I was taught that way. But, right, being the stubborn person that I am, and because I don't want to look like, what did you call it? Like a crazy lady, right? I didn't want people to think that I was crazy. But in this day and age, you can do that, right? Because if you're going for a walk, you could talk to yourself. When people walk by you, they're just going to think you have your headset in and you're talking to somebody on the phone, right? And we're still in that state of being polite and courteous to give people that space and privacy when they're talking to people on the phone. Oh, that's so sweet of you, Tammy. Give him a little prayer, right? But it sounds like Earl's got some really nice qualities too. That maybe, maybe it's just some company so that you don't have to cook for yourself, right? That you don't have to be all by yourself. Yeah, right. We all have different needs. We all have different experiences and we all have different living situations, right? And we can't expect what works for one person is something that's going to work for another. We should all use our own noggins, our own emotions and our own beliefs, right? Our own perspectives as to what's true for us. And I'm so grateful that you guys let me have my perspectives and you're still hanging out with me every night. I really appreciate it. It's absolutely amazing. Okay. I had open heart surgery as a baby, 16 months old, 11 pounds. Tammy, and you were still a caregiver? Holy moly. My Cuban surgeon gave my parents one chance in a million to live. My parents kissed me goodbye. I died 3 times on the table. Wow, Tammy. That is incredible. You are a miracle baby, right? You're meant to be here right now. I hope you're living your best life and your capabilities and what you can bring to the table, that you actually, right, give yourself a little bit of that kindness too. We all need this little bit of kindness for ourselves. Wow, I never knew that, Tammy. Wow. They kissed you goodbye. How beautiful. Right? Miracle baby. Yeah. Wow. And I hope you love life. Millions of angels are around. Right? Gotta talk to them though. You're right, Earl. We gotta talk to them. Okay, you guys. Let's grab a card. Maybe it'll be pertinent to the conversation. Maybe it won't. We'll just go into it for a couple of minutes and then I'm going to call it a night. And I won't be staying up too much later. And it's almost 10. That's pretty good. I've been trying to keep my timings at around an hour, right? You guys know that I can be a bit of a yapper. Tammy, what card did I pull tonight? What card did I pull tonight? Are you kidding me? 4 times in the span of a week. Did I have the cards up? Did you guys see me pull a card? Did you see me? Like, right? I even turned the deck around so I couldn't see them. That is absolutely incredible. We got this word companionship. Fourth time this week. And we talked a little bit this week too, didn't we? 54 powerful words. I still got words in that deck that I haven't even pulled yet. And I pulled, but it is in the patterning, isn't it? It is in that patterning where we have to take notice. And maybe I have to take Earl's advice, understanding that there are millions of angels around me that I should be voicing, because I went through these past 3 days all by myself. And other than saying, please take my pain away from me, vocally, loudly, I never spoke, right? I never spoke to those other parts of me, right? I never spoke to the angels or to whoever or whatever, right? Companionship is the company we keep in trust and close proximity. We have to give this some thought, you guys, because it's coming up for a reason. It really does. And this is going to be the topic of my contemplation tomorrow for sure. Wow. Absolutely incredible, right? 4 times in 1 week that we got this word companionship. And I always took it that each time the word comes up, that I dig at it in a different perspective. But maybe it is the idea that I'm not paying attention to the people around me. But I don't have a lot of people around me. I have my sisters that I try to talk to or see maybe once a week, right? But to be able to keep them in trust and close proximity, right? Because we do rub each other, don't we? Thumbnail. Right? We do rub off on each other. And maybe that's an indication that probably maybe I should be spending more time with my sisters, right? With the people that I do trust, the people who do show up for me with you guys and stuff, right? Like, oh my goodness, incredible. 4 times in the span of a week, we pulled this card. That's got to be it for me tonight. I pooped myself out. I really appreciate it. Oh, it's Happy Niece Day to everybody. If you're a niece, um, um, it is Niece Day, and I sent off a little email or a little message off to my niece because she's absolutely incredible, right? Yeah, keep people in trust, in close proximity, right? Because lots of us, we are mixed up with the wrong crew, right? Just so that we're not alone. But for myself, I would much rather be by myself than with somebody that I can't trust, right? That doesn't treat me well, that doesn't respect me, or, right? You know how people are every once in a while. I'll give you those little bites, and right, just to get your attention. Okay, you guys, that's my good cheer. Thank you so much for coming into my live tonight. Much appreciated. Take care. And again, it doesn't have a end live button for me tonight. I don't know what was going on. I contacted YouTube and let them know it was a problem, but yeah, it is what it is. Okay, you guys, you have a great night, and we'll see you later.